The Trey Lance era in San Francisco has come to a screeching halt. It started last Wednesday with the announcement that Sam Darnold will be the 49ers QB2 behind Brock Purdy. Then on Friday, mere hours before the 49ers' last preseason game against the Chargers, it was announced that Lance would be traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a fourth round pick. Bear in mind that the 49ers traded 3 first round picks to Miami to draft Lance back in 2021. How do you think the Lance trade will be remembered in San Francisco 49ers history?
I'm thinking they're hoping it's never going to be remembered. I mean, a catastrophic meltdown of epic proportions on that trade front, really turning around and trading 3 first round picks for a fourth round pick at this point. And, the destination also is a little strange to me with, Dak being established quarterback in Dallas, maybe just having him redshirt and learn from Dak possibly. But yeah, I'm thinking they're going to try to hide this one under the rug. Not great.
Now, what do you think of the landing spot in Dallas?
I have to suspect that the Cowboys were the team that offered the best package for Trey Lance, and the 49ers looked up and said, we're just going to take the best offer on the table, regardless of team or division or situation that it puts Lance in, whether it's the best place for him to succeed or get playing time. I think they just took whatever the best offer on the table was, which was a fourth round pick, but they were offered a third round pick at the NFL draft, and they were asking for a first round pick reportedly. They just kept holding and holding and holding, hoping that something would come around for Trey Lance. And then at the very end, they siphoned him off for a fourth round pick to, I guess we could say, a conference rival. I mean, the 49ers have knocked the Cowboys out of the playoffs the last 2 years. So I guess you could kind of say a conference rival.
So there's been reporting that they were trying to find the best situation for Lance. That was at least discussed after Lance reportedly told Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and company that he wanted out. I don't know if, like Zack was saying, that Dallas is the best landing spot for him, specifically when I consider Lance's situation. He's a QB that needs playing time, right? That's been the narrative for the last 3 years that he's been in San Francisco, as this guy does not get enough live game reps. Well, how is he going to get game reps in Dallas when you have, again, as Zack was saying, an established quarterback in Dak Prescott there? And even behind him, I don't think Lance has any claim to playing time more than Cooper Rush, who we saw Cooper Rush play last year, 4-1 in those starts. If you're Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys and you need to win games, you're in a similar situation that the Niners are in. You're a competing team. You think you have a chance to win the NFC. You think you have a chance to win the Super Bowl this year. You can't afford to try and develop Lance if, let's say, you have to get to your QB3, which is a situation that the Niners didn't expect to see themselves in, and no NFL team realistically that thinks they have a chance at winning a Super Bowl should expect to find themselves in. So I really don't know if Dallas is the best spot either. And that's part of the conundrum of Trey Lance is, what do you do with this guy? Because we know he needs to get playing time. I didn't see a better destination for him to get that playing time. And again, I just don't see how he's even going to be able to compete with Cooper Rush in practice throughout the course of a season, because that's really what he's down to. There's no more preseason games left. Where is Trey Lance's opportunity to prove himself as a top 3 selection that he was in 2021? That's, again, part of the issue of this trade. I think it's not necessarily for the best for Trey Lance at all. I think it is for the best of the Niners because, as you mentioned, and some of the reports I was hearing around the draft is it was really just a conditional 5th round pick that they would have got offered from the Minnesota Vikings. That was probably the best they could hope for. And then obviously you look at what's going on with Miami. So when I think about like how should this trade get remembered, Miami, I mean, they got Bradley Chubb, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, 3 top end players out of this deal. And then the 10 players drafted after Trey Lance, when you think about Patrick Surtain, Micah Parsons, Penei Sewell, these are all guys that the Niners could have used. It would have been better if they just didn't trade up at all. Stay at 12. They could have stayed at 12 and just gotten someone that could have helped the team. I don't know if that would have meant Jimmy Garoppolo sticks around for another couple of years, but it's better than kind of like this situation now, I would estimate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it is mind-boggling how lopsided this trade is in hindsight now. I mean, like you mentioned, Bradley Chubb, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and I mean, you have that infusion of talent that has to play some key in getting Jalen Ramsey on over there as well, and the possibility of now Jonathan Taylor being traded to Miami. So even though you have that talent for those first round picks, you're also generating more talent and more buzz for your team by having those players there and getting a guy like Jalen Ramsey and now obviously possibly Jonathan Taylor. So I mean, it really, 3 first round picks turned into a possibility of 5 of those guys. And the Niners have exactly what to show for it.
From the Cooper Rush standpoint, I just want to say, if the conversation is about where Trey Lance is going to get playing time in order to develop, if he's not going to be the backup quarterback over Cooper Rush, who I will remind you is a backup quarterback with a capital B at the start of that, he is not getting playing time anywhere if he can't beat out Cooper Rush for the backup quarterback job. Because you asked what scenario is he going to find playing time? I mean, Dak Prescott broke his leg in 2020. Dak Prescott missed 4 games at the start of 2022. We're not talking about a quarterback that's a picture of health, right? That the trade for Trey Lance is, if Dak Prescott goes down, Trey Lance is a similar skill type of quarterback. They have a very vanilla offense, which we've talked about in another video with Brian Schottenheimer coming in as the offensive coordinator. So just the simplest solution is plug Trey Lance in and see if the offense runs similarly without Dak Prescott. But if it's going to be Cooper Rush over Trey Lance, there was no place the Niners were going to trade him that he was going to get playing time.
But how does he beat Cooper Rush? Because he doesn't have any chance to showcase his abilities aside from the practice field. And the Niners basically told you they don't think that on a practice field, he's good enough to even beat Sam Darnold, or he's good enough to even beat Brandon Allen. He clearly, his talents don't show on a practice field. They need game reps, and there's no game reps to be had anymore. The Cowboys played their last preseason game again, too, this past weekend.
Here's the solution. Mike McCarthy walks in that quarterback room and says, Trey, your quarterback 2, Cooper, your quarterback 3.
So you're saying that they should rig it in the same way that the Niners rigged it in 2022 to have him over Jimmy Garoppolo? Because if you ask Niners players, they didn't think that Trey Lance was the better quarterback last year either. And they rigged the competition to allow, and heck, it wasn't even a competition. There was all the weirdness of signing Jimmy Garoppolo before that season even started. They rigged it to have Trey Lance as the QB1. And clearly no one on the team believed it either. And I don't think you could even sell that to Cowboys players who saw Cooper Rush last year and won games with Cooper Rush as quarterback.
Yeah, but that defeats the whole conversation, right? Because if Cooper Rush, who I'm going to reiterate, backup quarterback with a capital B, like the most backup of backup quarterbacks there is in the NFL right now. If Cooper Rush is better than Trey Lance, then the Cowboys probably shouldn't have given up that much to get Trey Lance in the first place, because that means Trey Lance is essentially a third string quarterback at this point, and it means that he's in a position to potentially get cut depending on how rosters are set up for a team. So if the Cowboys are invested in his development, which in fairness, they're a lot less invested in his development than the 49ers were, given what they had to give up to get Trey Lance. If they are invested in his development, they will name him the QB2 and hope that Dak Prescott plays all 17 games, right? The Cowboys didn't trade for Trey Lance because they view him as the long-term replacement to Dak Prescott, right? That's not the end game here for the Dallas Cowboys, is like, we will develop him for 2 years. Then when Trey enters his 5th year, he could potentially replace Dak Prescott. That's not the game here. They just saw an opportunity to trade for a guy that they valued as a 1st or 2nd round grade a couple of years ago and only had to give up a 4th rounder to get him. And he's a better backup quarterback option than Will Grier potentially. So I don't think that the long-term plan for the Cowboys is give Trey Lance the development necessary to become a starter, because who's the team that was going to do that? I mean, who's the team that was going to trade for Trey Lance now after the 49ers not only like chose Sam Darnold over him, but like kind of humiliated him on the way out the door, right? They kind of made it clear, hey, we don't believe in this guy at all. And they just lowered his value more and more and more, and then cashed out at the last minute when reports are, like you said, Trey Lance was ready to, demand his way out the door. I really want to know why he wasn't at practice on the day it was announced that Sam Darnold was there. Because Kyle Shanahan's.
They said it was an emotional meeting,
yeah. By the way, that's a lazy lie. It's not even a good lie. It's just a lazy lie on their part. It's not even a good lie.
Put yourself in Trey Lance's shoes. It would have been an awkward situation for him to be out there on the practice field the same day as the announcement. It protected them from having to answer the questions too. It was a little awkward that they had players go out there and have to answer the questions for them, but still, like, it was a way of protecting both the player and themselves. It was a way to protect John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan from that tough question as well.
And a way to get Trey Lance out of San Francisco. Because one of the fun elements of this whole story that hasn't been talked about a lot is Sam Darnold and Trey Lance have the same agent. So it's most likely that agent or their representation may have leaked the news that Sam Darnold was named the clear-cut quarterback 2, because it benefits Trey Lance to get out of San Francisco if he's going to be the quarterback 3, and it benefits Sam Darnold to know that he's the clear-cut quarterback 2 going into the season. So I just want to know what the actual reason was, because I'm not buying the emotional distress day off for Trey Lance and then he's traded 48 hours later. I'm not buying that.
Zach, any theories as far as the actual reason?
I mean, we could deep dive into, hundreds and hundreds of theories about, what had happened prior to that announcement, but I really don't know. I mean, I could guess that basically, like what Kyle said, they found out and that was it. He was done. He walked out, walked away. Looking at all this in hindsight, I do want to ask you guys a question. Is this considered the biggest draft bust of all time now? Now that we kind of have finality on, how many games he played, the assets that were given up for this player, where he was drafted. I'm just curious to get your guys' thoughts on that.
Well, what's going to be the big separator here is that the 49ers are actually good and could still potentially be good. And the fact that the Brock Purdy element, if Brock Purdy continues to play at the level that he's played at, then the Niners never have to look back and think about this decision ever again. When I compare that to other draft day bust, like a Jamarcus Russell, a Ryan Leaf, or a Johnny Manziel, that were embarrassing because the team was bad and stayed bad after they left their respective franchise. If the Niners, again, their success continues, if Brock continues to play like he did last season, then I don't think it will be remembered as that. I mean, it's an embarrassment, certainly for Lynch and Shanahan when they have to answer questions about this. And certainly if Lance goes on to do greater things, that's going to be another element of this that's going to cause them issues. As it stands right now, they basically told you something. They think Trey Lance sucks, and they were really ready to cut bait.
So my answer to your question is, I don't know if it's the biggest draft buster all time or how we really quantify it against like other strange scenarios. The thing that I feel saying is that this is the most unique draft bust of all time, in the sense that the 49ers gave up more for Trey Lance than the Denver Broncos gave up for Russell Wilson. And we could argue that the Broncos, for all the faults, have gotten more production out of Russell Wilson than the 49ers got out of Trey Lance. From that respect, it's one of the biggest value trades in the history of the NFL. And for a player that ended up not getting basically any playing time during his tenure in San Francisco, that is a really unique situation, combined with the fact that the 49ers, this is the thing I say all the time, like football is hard to understand in the first place. Like for the common fan, it's hard to really understand what you're watching in football. Now imagine an offense that football people don't even understand in San Francisco. So you have this crazy unique offense with this crazy unique essentially coordinator in Kyle Shanahan, who has all these crazy ideas about putting a football team together. They have all of this talent on offense, all of this talent on defense. And then they went through the rotating door of, we're going to draft Trey Lance, but then we're going to play Jimmy Garoppolo for an entire season. And then we're going to make Lance the starter, but Garoppolo's still here for some reason. And then Lance is going to get hurt and Garoppolo's going to get hurt. And now it's Brock Purdy. And now Brock Purdy is basically the new Nick Foles. And like, how the hell did this happen? Now he's our quarterback. And now it's Purdy versus Lance. And now it's, no, wait, never mind. Purdy's the number one. And now Sam Darnold's here for some reason. Like, it's just such a unique situation. And for it to go the way it did, I don't know if it's the biggest draft bust ever, but it's such a unique situation because, I mean, like Juju pointed out, they've been in the NFC Championship game 2 years in a row. They have more Pro Bowlers on their team in the last 4 years than the Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks. Like, it is remarkable, the success that they've had, despite the fact that they drafted Solomon Thomas, drafted Mike McGlinchey in the first round, traded 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance. Like, it is remarkable, the success that they've had in spite of all of these missteps along the way. It's the most unique draft bust I've ever seen.
Biggest thing I learned is don't trust Lynch and Shanahan to draft in the first round. Aside from Nick Bosa, it tends not to work really well in San Francisco. If they trade down to the second, third, fourth, hell, I guess even 7th round, I'm okay with that. That's where they draft their all pros. That's where they draft those Pro Bowlers, because clearly when they draft in the first round, not a lot of good things tends to happen.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I'm a product of a Belichickian era, so he's famous for doing that. So I definitely feel you.
Hey guys, we want to give a big shout out to Zack Burl for joining us on this episode. Zach's one of the outstanding hosts of the BOTA Sports Podcast. Those guys do a great job of covering the NFL and fantasy football. Give them a listen and find links to their stuff in our YouTube description below. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe on our stuff as well. From Juju, stay safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you on the next one.